Welcome, everybody. Today, we are in our fourth and final week of our series, Redeem Legacy. If you've been here for any of them, who's enjoyed this series so far? Yeah, it's been a good series as we've walked through the book of Ruth. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. For those that you maybe you haven't been with us, you've been enjoying your summer. It's been a hot guy summer. That's because I sweat a lot. But it's, the summertime is one of those times. But if you have not been able to be with us, I want to kind of catch us up a little bit. The book of Ruth is in the Old Testament. It's a short book. And really, there's three main characters. There is a woman by the name of Ruth, which is probably a good thing. Her mother-in-law, Naomi, both of them are widows. And then there's a man by the name of Boaz. And Boaz is just kind of the knight in shining armor to Ruth. Now, Naomi, being a widow, wants her daughter-in-law to not live the life that she knows is in front of her. And so she's trying her best to help her understand that this gentleman, Boaz, would probably be a good person to appeal to get him to marry her. And so last week, we kind of talked about that. It's kind of where we left on this cliffhanger of this romantic drama that we find ourselves in chapter 4 and throughout the book of Ruth. But last week, we heard that Naomi tells Ruth, hey, Ruth, here's what I need you to do. I need you to clean yourself up, girl. I need you to take a bath. That's a good thing to start with. Everybody, take a bath or don't take a bath because, like I said last week, my kids tell me that that's just sitting in your own dirt. So take a shower, but get yourself cleaned up. Put on some perfume. Put on something that smells nice. This is the way to a man's heart, apparently. And then she said, put something nice on. But then she gave great advice, and she said, don't do anything until after he eats because, as we know, men can get pretty hangry. So let him eat first, and then find out where he lays to go to bed. There's no sexualization in this story, but what Naomi tells Ruth to do is for Ruth to go lay at his feet, at Boaz's feet. This is kind of a form of submission, and then it startles him. He wakes up. When he wakes up, he asks who's there. She says it's Ruth, and then she starts to basically profess her love for him. You see, but Boaz is a man of character, and Boaz realizes there's this thing called a goel. That's the original term. How we would translate it is what we call a kinsman redeemer. And what that means is that a kinsman redeemer is kind of a guardian of a family. And these men would just, if there was any wrongs that were done to somebody, they would fix it. If there was land that needed to be purchased back for the family, they would do that. If a widow who had no children needed to be married, they would do that. And this was the whole thought was, Naomi thought that Boaz was the goel, but Boaz, being a man of character and a godly man, chooses to be honest and truthful and not do what he wants, but do what's right for Ruth. And so what he says is, and where we kind of left off last week is that I'm actually not that person. I would love to do that. If he won't redeem you, I'll redeem you. If he won't marry you, I'll marry you, but I want to do what's right for you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that man, and I'm going to find out if he will take this honor of taking you as his wife. And that's where we left off last week. And so today we're going to pick up in chapter 4 of Ruth, starting in verse 1. And it says this. It says, meanwhile, Boaz, again, this is right after he says, I'm going to go find out. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there just as the guardian redeemer, the goel, the kinsman redeemer, he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, come over here, my friend, and sit down. So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, sit here, and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so, but if you will not, tell me so I will know, for no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. I will redeem it, he said. This is the other man. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. At this, the guardian redeemer said, then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, buy it yourself. And he removed his sandal. Do you remember back? Like, I want you to go back to those days. You know, maybe it's not just the person that you're with now, but those teenage and early teenage years where you would want to see the person that you're interested in and you would want them to see you too. Like for me and my wife, this is kind of what I mean. For me and my wife, like I remember when I saw my wife and I wanted to do anything I could to impress her, but I had to be in her presence to be able to do that. So what I would do, we would go to like conferences and we would go to camps together and she would be talking with her friends and we would be at a hotel or something and I would look in the lobby to see if she was out there. And if she wasn't out there, I'd go back to my room and wait like 5 minutes and then I'd go back in the elevator, act like I just come out of my room to come back down to look if she was out there. Nope, she's not out there. I'd go back up and until I had the time. Then I saw her and then I just walked coolly by. And I sit down, and I'm a funny guy, so I crack some jokes, but I wasn't trying to crack jokes for the other people to laugh. I was trying to crack jokes so Kelly would hear them laugh and think, wow, that man is funny. He's got a humor that I need to be a part of. You ever remember that, like being strategic in trying to get around that person that you're trying to impress or that person that you're trying? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the weird one here and I'm like stalker. But this is what's happening with Boaz. Not that he's trying to be a stalker for this other gentleman, but he's being strategic in going to the gate. Now the gate, we just hear that and go, oh, that's the gate to the city. No. The gate was actually like a place in town that they would come to, that everybody would come to. And this was like where they would share about their day, where everybody in the town would be. This would kind of be like the central station of the town. And what's happening here is that Boaz knows that he will see this other man that he knows is the actual kinsman redeemer. He will see him and he wants to bring up some business. Now, here's what I love about this story more than anything is that Boaz is slick. And what I mean by this is that he has a plan going into this. Because the first thing that he says is he goes to this guy and he goes, hey, Naomi, she's back from Moab. And now that she's back, she's actually selling some of Elimelech's property. And you're the next one up. And so do you want to buy the property? Because this would have been the right. He's trying to like leave the good stuff for afterwards because he wants him to maybe say no to the land. But what do we see is that the guy goes, land? I'll take some land. Like, I want to build I'll take some land. And then Boaz says, oh, by the way, you know that woman who was the Moabite woman, Ruth? Yeah. If you take the land, you kind of got to marry her too. Oh, and by the way, there's her mother-in-law too. It would kind of be like this, like going to a house with your real estate agent, and going, you get all this. Do you want this? It's in your price range. Do you want this? And we all be like, yeah, I want that. And then he goes, but there's one stipulation, maybe two. The first thing is if you want the house, you kind of got to marry the girl. And the house kind of comes with the old lady in the attic. You see, what Boaz is doing is Boaz knows that this guy probably isn't going to want to do this, so he's bringing it up. And what I find interesting about this interaction here is that this man, this other kinsman redeemer, we don't know his name because his name was not worth putting in the book of Ruth. Because he was a selfish person. You see, this man, when it was about him and getting some land, he was all in. But when it came to actually doing what he was supposed to do and being bothered by somebody else's stuff, what does he do? Nah, bro, I'm good. I'm good. Nope, I'm good. So much so that his name is not worth putting in the book. And then it got me thinking, how often do we as believers do the very same thing? I love coming to church. I love it. Oh, I throw up my hands. I love it. I love to worship. I'm a really good singer, and I love to worship. I can play the guitar. I'm really good at it, and he plays the guitar really, really good. I love coming. What if I was to ask, hey, we need some people to help us with our breakaway camp. We need some people to help us serving in Kids World. We need some people to help us do this because we want to reach a world who's lost, and we want to make it impossible for people to come into this place and not find and follow Jesus. We want to, but I got some stuff I got to do. You see, I'm good with coming to church, but I don't got time for the other stuff. You see, I got it for me. I'm going to come and receive, and I'm going to get what Matt wants. But if I got to help if I got to take another hour of my day, no, you do that. There's enough people. You guys do that. I'm just coming to church, and I got to go. I got things to do and people to see. You see, I'm not saying this because I'm trying to guilt anybody or shame anybody or offend anybody. But here's the reality. You don't have to just use your skills in church, your gifts in church to be used by God. It's just you have to have a willingness to do it. And what hit me this last week when I was studying for this message was this. When was the last time I invited somebody to church? When was the last time I talked to somebody who's hurting and I invited somebody to church? When was the last time I saw a need somewhere that wasn't preaching and I stepped up and said, I'm ready to serve. I'll do whatever it takes. And the reality is, it's been a while. And so it got me thinking. If you got gifts, here's what I'm going to tell you. We just asked you to pull out your phones and text breakaway. And I saw no phones moving out. We've asked people to serve in Kids World. We've asked people to serve on our First Impressions team. We've asked people to serve on our worship team. And what I see is I see a lot of people excited for what's going on here, but I don't see a lot of people excited to get involved. And here's the reality is I'm not saying this because we need you. I'm saying this because I believe that there's something more that we can do than just receive. This is not a movie theater. This is not an entertainment. This is not a concert. This is not a public speaking thing. This is the house of God, and we are a part of his family, and we get an opportunity to serve his people. But maybe your gifts aren't here. Maybe you're just a good person outside. And here's what we've done is we've decided that we were going to make some invite cards. Not for anything special, just to invite people to church. Because when was the last time you were just sitting around? Maybe you were now here's what I'm gonna tell you. If you go to a restaurant and you're not planning on tipping very well or being very nice, do not give one of these out. But we were just at Red Robin the other day, and I remember talking to our waitress, and our waitress was talking about how she's having a tough time. And you know what I wish I had? Because here's the thing, I don't know if this might just go in the trash. But this also might be something that helps them go, you know what? I'm going to try it out today. I'm so desperate, I'll try it out. And here's the thing is that we have 3 different ones. I didn't make these. Someone else did, but I love them. Said, we have a seat saved for you. I saved a seat for you. And then my favorite, What are you doing Sunday? We have these at the Connect Center. Here's what I'm going to ask for us to do. We only have a few. We're going to get some more professionally made, but these are the start because I just wanted to get them out because I believe that we are missing an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus and just get them to church. If they can just get here, who knows what God will do? Who knows what he'll do? Because here's the thing. I look around this room and there are people in this room that God has done amazing things in your life just by you showing up. You see this kinsman redeemer, he doesn't want anything to do with the rest of the stuff. He just wants what's his, so much so that his name is forgotten. But Boaz knows that this is not the way things go. He's a godly man, and he goes, it's not about me. It's about them. It's about her. And if you won't do it, I'll do it. And then they do some weird thing with shoes. But it's like signing a contract. And here's what I love is they have 10 of these elders around them. And we actually see why they're around them here in Ruth 4, 9 through 12. It says, then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. They had some cool names back then. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today, you are witnesses. Then, this is so important right here. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in that place and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. What Boaz is saying here is he's saying, guys, you all saw it. The deal is done. You're my witnesses. It's done. It's over. I bought it. I got the land. I got the woman. You guys saw it, right? And like, we saw it. It's all yours. She's all yours. But before you go, we want to pray over you. Before you go, we want to pray a prayer blessing. So first they start with Ruth. And though this prayer is kind of just generic, it's actually really deep if you think about it, because what they say is they pray this. They pray to an outsider looking in that she would be like two matriarchs of our faith. Because what they did was they brought her in from being outside. And they prayed a blessing that her life would be something that would echo and ripple for years to come, and she would be just like Rachel and Leah. Pillars. And if you don't know the story of Ruth all the way through, that's what she does. But then they turn to Boaz and they say to Boaz, we know all the good stuff you do. We know the character, integrity. We know that you are a good man. And here's our prayer, is that you would continue to be a good man. And because you're choosing to be a good man, your family will reap the blessings of your decisions. Your family will reap the blessings of what you've given to God. And we pray that blessing over you today. You see, here's the thing. Boaz was not a man who was about numero uno. Boaz was a man who denied himself for the goodness of others. We actually see Jesus kind of says the same thing about us as believers. In Mark 8:34, it says this. It says, then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. What does it mean to be a disciple? It means to be a follower of Jesus. What is Jesus saying here? You want to be a disciple? Deny yourself. Pick up your cross. See, here's the thing is that I'm really good at doing what I like to do. I'm really good at being selfish. And my guess is you're really good at being selfish too. You know what's really hard? Denying myself. And here's not what it's not saying this. It's not saying deny yourself of all the good things in life. Deny yourself of things. Here's what it's saying. It's saying to deny yourself for the good of others. To make it not about you, but to make it about others. You see, I'm glad that someone in my life chose to deny themselves, being scared to ask me to church, but just decided to invite. And in that, I gave my life to Jesus. You don't know what denying will do, but here's what I tell you. If we can just get people to Jesus, everything can change. Boaz denies himself. And here's the thing is that Charles Spurgeon, who's an amazing pastor, kind of older gentleman, he's no longer alive, but he says that Jesus is actually our Boaz. Because there's a lot of similarities between Jesus and Boaz. You see, we were brought into the family of Christ. Boaz was a relative of Naomi. Jesus redeemed us. Jesus bought us at a price. And Jesus brought us in. And there's blessings from what Jesus has done being our Boaz. Some of those blessings, some of the things that we get for us, and this is what it means for us, is number one is that we belong. We have a personal relationship with God, but we belong to the family of Christ. Number two, we have hope, joy, and peace. Can I tell you something? Being happy is one thing, but being filled with joy is another. Having hope is exciting, but having peace is actually relaxing. We have freedom because Jesus bought us. We have freedom from our sin. We have freedom from our circumstance. We have freedom from our stuff. We're comforted because the Holy Spirit lives in us and he comforts us. That's his name. He's a comforter. And even more, we have victory. Can I tell you this? I say it time and time again, but it's true every time I say it. I've read the end of the book. Jesus wins. So we have an opportunity to give our life to the waymaker, to the champion, to the victor. And his name is Jesus. And this last part of Ruth 4, these last few verses, says this. It says, so Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Ram. Ram, the father of Amminadab. Amminadab, the father of Nahshon. Nahshon, the father of Solomon. Solomon, the father of Boaz. Boaz, the father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jesse. And Jesse, the father of David. Yes, that is David versus Goliath. David, a man after God's own heart. David. What's going on here? Well, they get married. So he buys her. He redeems her. They get married. They do what married people do and have a baby. We're going to skip that part. They consummated the marriage. They have a baby. And then Ruth brings to Naomi her grandson. Grandma's in the house. You remember that first time that you held your baby, your grandbaby? You remember that? Oh, as a parent, it was so good to get rid of them already. But you grandparents, just remember that? And then Ruth starts to talk about all this stuff that has happened. And then it helps me to go back to Ruth 1 in the first 4 verses. This book starts with death. See, Naomi and her husband have kids, and Naomi's husband dies, and then her kids die. I don't know about you, but there's only so much death a person can take. Could you imagine losing your husband and your babies? But Naomi never makes it about herself. Naomi always makes it about Ruth, and makes it about Ruth and what God is doing in Ruth and through Ruth. And she's gonna be a protector, she's gonna be a helper, she's gonna be a guide, or she's gonna do whatever she can to make sure that Ruth doesn't have to walk down the same difficult road that Naomi had to. It wasn't about Naomi. It was about Ruth. But here, we see that Ruth, knowing all of this and what she's walked through, gives her the blessing of a grandbaby. You see, the book started with death, but it ended with life. The book started with difficult season, but ended with blessing. And here's what I'm here to tell you today is I don't know what you've walked through. I don't know what you're going through, but I promise you this, your blessing is coming. But sometimes you gotta walk through the storm. Sometimes you just gotta have faith that God's moving, and you gotta have faith that God's gonna bring you through, and your blessing is on the other side. Because here's what I know, I've seen enough people who have had difficult season are on the other side living in their blessing now and tell the tale of the goodness of God. And you would think that's the climax. Matt, we could end right there. And we probably could. But then I think there's this weird spot for a genealogy. If you don't know what a genealogy is, it's basically just a list of names that most of us skip. If we're just honest when we read our Bibles, oh, we're reading Matthew 1. Awesome. Skipping. Let's get to the good stuff. I don't need to read names I don't even know how to pronounce. But it gives us the line of Perez, which leads to David. But then, if we were to look in Matthew chapter 1, it continues on. And generations down the line, from number 1, Boaz's mom, who's Rahab, who is a prostitute. We don't want them in the church, right? But God will use them because your past doesn't dictate his future. God redeems Rahab. God redeems Ruth. And then we see in Matthew 5:16, Obed, the father of Jesse, starting right there at the end of 5. And Jesse, the father of King David. Now, David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Solomon, the father of Rehoboam. Rehoboam, the father of that guy the father of Asa. Asa, the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat, the father of Jeroboam. Let's skip down to verse 16. Generations later, and it says this, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. And Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Here's what I want to ask a question. You're gonna raise your hand, and you're gonna keep your hand raised until you can't do this anymore, okay? Can you name, if you know both of your parents' names, can you put your hands up? And leave them there. You know both your parents' names. Okay? You know all four, so both sets of your grandparents' names. You know all 8 of your great-grandparents' names. Ooh. You know all 16 of your great-great. No hands raised. 4 generations. your name will be forgotten. But your legacy will live on. The decisions you make today will live on. Rahab, a prostitute, let God use her. And because of her decision and the decision of Ruth to give everything she had to God, even though she's an outsider looking in, she gave everything. She did what was told of her, and she did it. And we go down the line. Was David a perfect man? Nope. But we talk about all the good things he did. My guess is Ruth had no clue that from her line, from her blood would come the Savior, the Messiah of the world. And here's what I'm here to tell you today. I don't know what's coming from your line, but here's what I know. You can be the one to pass it on. You can be the one to choose. I'm going to make the decision today to follow Jesus. I'm going to make the decision today to pray with my kids. I'm going to make the decision today to make sure that we don't do that, but we do that. I don't know what it is, but you have an opportunity to allow your legacy to live on way further than your name ever will. Because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about him and it's about them. And so here's what I want to do. I'm going to have Maria come up. And she's just going to sing some pretty tunes. If you have your family with you, this is a time where I want you to pray with each other. If you don't have your family with you, this is a time where I want you to pray with yourself. Like just pray to God. If you have a spouse, pray with your spouse. Because here's the thing, is that even spouses, I know people who have not had kids, who their legacy will live on, not through their blood kids, but will live on through the kids that they've taken in, or the kids that they've chose to be family despite blood. This is not a response time, this is reflection time. For some of us, we've been modeled great people in our lives who have shown us what it means to be a believer. And we just get to carry on the line. But I know there's some people here, Matt, I don't have that. I'm the first in my family to give my life to Jesus. I'm the first one. What a blessing. Because the legacy starts with you. The legacy begins in your family. And for generations to come, what was disaster on the horizon is now blessing on the horizon. Because God has a plan and he's going to use you. Praise God. All I want us to do is reflect. God, what can I do? How can I make this more about you in my life? How can I make this more about what you're doing? So over the next little bit, we're going to turn the lights down and Maria's going to kind of just sing here. But I want that to be our heart. God, what do you want from me? Let's reflect.